Hello, everybody. This is Robert Price with Elite Minds LLC. Tonight, we have an opportunity to learn and hear from Zev Taublieb, one of the coolest professional soccer players that I know, who is going to we're just going to, chat and talk a little bit about this mindset of a champion and really just kind of walk our way through some of the cool things that we've been doing and for the time that we've been working together, which has been quite some time. So I'm excited to bring Zev in here, and we'll see where we go. So Zev, welcome.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure, and I'm looking forward to having this discussion. I can say, just as my introduction, that there's very few times in a person's career where you can identify one moment where working with anybody like made a really big difference. And I told the story to you before. We had picked a theme thought, and I remember I was playing in a game in Sweden in front of quite a few thousand people, and I wasn't having maybe the best of games, but I over and over, and the theme thought led to basically the assist in the last minute of the game to leading us to victory. And I can accredit that directly to the work that we did. And like I said, it's rare that you can kind of, particularly in this art, it's rare that you can do that. So I've always been super grateful to have had the pleasure to work with Mr. Price, and it's great to be here.
Awesome. So Zev, one of the cool things that we've been kind of working through in your own just kind of personal journey is, so you went all the way to Europe and from Valparaiso, and now we're back here at Richmond. And so just kind of, that's a mental grind, right? So every which way that you go, there's new people, there's new teammates, there was a new language you had to learn. How are you able to just kind of stay on top of that?
Well, part of it certainly is that I love it. That certainly helps a lot. That we're kind of chasing, I guess you could say, you feel like you're chasing this feeling. And so you're like, no matter the people or the language, there's this feeling and that you want. But as you learn kind of over time, and I've learned working with you, is when you kind of chase a feeling like that, it's very much attachment, and that can be detrimental to your playing. And all of a sudden you kind of go, what is the objective reality? And we spoke about this multiple times, and they do this with like patients who are working through PTSD and other things like that. You go, what is the reality of the situation? And oh my gosh, I'm in a new country. Oh my gosh, I get to learn a new language. Oh my gosh, I get to go to these places that I've never been before and wouldn't otherwise probably ever visit. And then of course you're chasing this dream, but as I've been doing this for a little while now, you see that, and it's cliche, but the journey kind of is the destination. But the way I'm able to justify that is I'm able to go, what is the quote unquote present moment giving to me? And that makes it, much more enjoyable. And then you can kind of let go of the playing time, or the coach doesn't like you or the players or whatever it is you go, oh my gosh, look at this amazing chance I have.
Yeah, that's pretty cool, right? So, I mean, even in that, like a lot of times I work with athletes around the controllables, right? And we talk about that. That's kind of like out there now for a lot of athletes to hear that and try to begin understanding, like, well, what does that really mean? And I mean, the reality of that is just really understanding how do you actually stay in the moment, because the moment that you have, the present moment, really is all that you have any control over anyway. And so if you can kind of continue to live life kind of in that present moment, all those good things, if you will, start to kind of become more apparent to you. So I'm glad you've been able to kind of see that. So, and it's just kind of cool, the journey. I've shared your journey with a friend of mine about, sometimes when we are achieving what we're going after or trying to achieve these goals that we set for ourselves, it's like so hard to see the goodness when we're in the moment, right? Where we're in it, we can't quite see like all the coolness around it. And so sometimes for me, when I was working with you, it's just like, I know he doesn't see this, but it's really cool that, how you're able to get from one place to the next place. And your journey is pretty amazing. And so, the one cool thing that I was going to ask you tonight too was, so way back when you're at Valparaiso, did you ever think that this was going to be how it was going to be?
I didn't I didn't know exactly. I had an image like I'd be going abroad relatively soon after school. I would say the main thing that changed was when I signed my first pro contract. I remember I knew that I was going to do whatever I had to do, and I wasn't drafted initially, so I was going to all these combines, reaching out to all these people, and that was like I'm just going to do it until somebody shoots me. That was just there was no negotiation. But what really flipped me was I was at Sacramento, and I was like kind of a star really quickly, and I was like, okay, well I'm here. We played against a really big team from England in the off season, and I played against them, which was like my dream. And I thought, okay, a couple more weeks and I'll be over there. And then the coach left, new coach came in, I was let go and traded to a team in the Eastern Conference. And that's really where I was like, oh, I thought this was an upward curve like forever. And then you learn through which is enabled me to perform really well. As you go, this upward curve that you have in mind is, of course, like not a reality. Even if you say I have technically on a level perspective, had a forward curve, but that's not how you view it. It's not how I think you've taught me to view it. Is you go more like, what is the parts that you're enjoying on this, and it so happens you go left, right, up, down, but those uncontrollables, you're really more like, where do I have the opportunity to go next? And of course, as you're a young athlete, you're like, I want to make more money, I want to play at the best team, and obviously there's still a lot of truth to that, but it becomes like, what am I doing? And then the other stuff you are able to let go a lot easier. And then all of a sudden, this curve that you've been like, this roller coaster that you feel like you've been on, all of a sudden disappears because you're just focusing on what you can do. And then all of a sudden, it's more of like a railroad track that you just, or I think a better analogy is like a stream of water, and you're just on for the ride, and you go around some rocks and whatever else, but it doesn't feel like a roller coaster of up and down, and that helps you perform, and it's also just lovelier from a life perspective.
Right. And so the cool thing that you kind of alluded to was like just knowing that not it we always think that the journey, we hear that all the time, like, man, it's really the journey, it's the process. And obviously I drill that in and try to get athletes young and old to hear that and understand that, because that is the way that we can actually get that champion mindset. Because when we're talking about that growth and fixed and really trying to understand like the between the two of those things, and it's kind of like really cool. And I have this up here for us to kind of see and just kind of remind you a little bit of like, so how do I get from that fixed mindset to that champion mindset where I'm actually learning and seeing some things from a different perspective and really looking at, how do I embrace the challenges? How do I persist in the face of all those setbacks? And once we start to embrace that and start to live this out, then this is how you actually begin to have the mindset of a champion. And this growth mindset will sustain us in the midst of all kinds of crazy. So it's pretty, I know you remember this, me taking you through this, because this is usually like the first thing that we do, and trying to get people to understand like there's this process that we have to go through to get to that mindset that we're looking for. And so even since you and I have worked, I've continued to utilize this and then understand too that there's some things I call now in the middle of this, where we have the mixed mindset or the low growth mindset, where there's some other spaces in between here that allow us to actually stay on that journey towards that process. So appreciate working with you around that too, because that allowed me to even grow and look for better ways even to teach this and to get athletes to move along this curve here. It seems so simple, right?
It seems so simple, and I remember looking at this, and we actually went back to it. And that was one thing too that I think I grew working with you and continuing to work with you, is like, I used to kind of think very similar, like, okay, once Robert and I work together enough times, I'll never need him again, and even when you play soccer, doesn't matter how many times you kick the ball against the wall, like you can still improve this. And I used to dread that in a sense, like, oh my gosh, like one of the things that's great about physical therapy to some degree is you go there for physical therapy, you do physical therapy, and then you graduate. Then you still have to continue exercises, but you're no longer injured. And the brain, and this is, I think, really important for everybody, it doesn't, at least for me, I found a lot of peace knowing that the voices never really end. Now, how you handle the voices certainly changes. And with my work with Robert, I've been able to address them. In fact, today at training, I'd picked a theme thought and I'd gone, that obviously worked really well for me. And I've gone, how is it that I want to do this? Or the other one on that growth mindset, something that I'd struggled with in the past was the success of others. And when I saw that written down, and almost, it's also really wonderful because when we're in our own minds and we're by ourselves a lot, we question like, oh my gosh, how could I be thinking this? It's horrible. And then you address it and you say, this is not like, you're not the first one to think it. You're not the last one to think it. It's okay. Like, it's okay. It's even okay, even having after spoken to you, that I have the thought again. But the important part is that I've tried, or I continue to try to address those either with your tools or, through training, through meditation or other things of that nature, where you can draw awareness to the fact that you've thought about it. And then you move on. And then, maybe you do make a bad pass because that was in your mind. But, you can say to yourself, that's okay. Like, I'm a human. I have that thought. And you go on to the next one. And it doesn't result in 10 bad passes. Results, and that's that. And so that growth mindset, I know, helped me a ton. I have it with me, actually, on my phone. And I refer to it.
Very cool. And like you said, I know a lot of people always ask me that too. Like, so, what you got a program, I have this mental playbook that I use and ensure you get the skills and you learn those skills and then I should be good. Right. And I'm like, technically you should be, but our brains are constantly growing. And then more importantly, we continue to find ourselves in new experiences. And so sometimes it's really good just to have, a person that you can come to, not maybe on as regular of a basis. We were meeting at one point weekly, and then, we kind of spread that out. And now it becomes just kind of, hey, I just want to kind of walk through some things with you. And so I find that a lot with all of my clients is like, especially in the beginning, it's like, how long, what's this? Is it like a prescription? Like you said, like PT, like, so just going to write that prescription for me, mind fixed. Perfect. And we know that it doesn't quite work out that way.
To add to that, one of the things that I started with you was like, you were asking me kind of about we talked about life outside of football. And when I first began this project, I think this is true for a lot of athletes. I actually, at first, you're like, I don't really care if I love my life. All I care is that I perform. I just want to win. If that means I have a horrible life, like that's what we think anyways. Fine. Then I'll go to Robert. I'll do whatever he says, just like I take the pills, just like I run the fitness. I'll do what he says, and then I can perform well. And this is kind of a process where, and it's, has that uncomfortable feeling in some degree, but it is really, to do this right, it's really beneficial to kind of, similar to the body where you go, my calf hurts. Well, that's connected to your hamstring, and your hamstring's connected to your back. And so when you see the brain in that way and you go, oh, wow, like, just how is my life? Do I, am I in a relationship or whatever? Is there a higher being of some capacity, or how does that play a role in my life? All that really does make a huge, addressing it, what you believe is to your own, but addressing it, I found to be really helpful in terms of performance. But of course it did help with my performance. But as you keep doing this, you do realize, like, I've performed really well and been miserable. And then you go, well, that didn't work. Now I'd like a combination of both, please. And experience to kind of figure that out. So it really just takes experience. You just have to feel it on your own.
Yeah, it's crazy. Today I had an opportunity to see a client in action. And so we talked at the end of his performance, and he's like, I didn't play so great, right? And I actually had my kids with me, and they were like, didn't he have like 5 birdies or something crazy? And I'm like, yeah, it was good. It's just certain athletes, when you don't feel right, there's other things going on, but your performance is still able to be good. And that's also because it was like he was saying, literally, I was just trying to focus on that one thing that we've been working on. And so despite not feeling very good about it, and the technique wasn't all great, but it was that, like, okay, I'm gonna focus on that one thing, that task at hand. If I just do that enough, then I'll be able to, work my way around here, you know? And so oftentimes, like, you know, this in playing, and one of the things I like to do all the time is talk to athletes about failure and making sure that we actually have a failure plan. Because when we have that failure plan, when failure shows up, it's not uncontrollable. It's not something that's like going to create anxiety or stress because you've already got a plan for it.
I think failure obviously has negative connotations. I've heard that before, but
The idea that you give us permission to plan for failure, which is kind of against what most of our coaches do. Most of our coaches are like, don't ever mess up.
That's right.
And if you mess up, don't do it again. So, and it's, I mean, that doesn't, you know, and for players, you know, every player's a little different. Some, like, when they've done poorly, it fires them up to do better.
others are not. The idea to have a strategy, because it will occur, and what your definition of failure obviously is a little bit as well, but from a accepted concept of misplacing the pass or getting more strokes on the ball than you would like, as a failure, it's negative to happen. And it helps you really perform better. It helps you have a plan.
And we'll let Zev's mic get going again. So as he fixes that,
right,
and there it is. Boom, back in.
Oh, now I'm back.
There you go. There you go. Talk about that. Given the permission, right, to be able to fail. Like you said, I know coaches, they definitely don't. Most coaches don't allow for that to happen, or they don't want to talk about that. But definitely proves of value to you.
Exactly, 100%.
So awesome. So, what's some things that you wish we would have worked on, or could have worked on, or done a little bit better on? What do you think?
I really enjoyed everything we've done. Maybe I'm trying to think. I really enjoyed, like, particularly because I had a sports psychologist before you, and I had a really bad experience, in my opinion. It just didn't go well, and I was very hesitant to do it again because I just didn't see the use in it. And then for me, it's a big part of my game. And then when I was recommended to you by another teammate of mine, you know, the transformation was night and day. And I was in a very angry place. Not only the fact that I was hoping to play better soccer, or better is not even the right word, just to play in a way that I felt was myself and to do justice to myself. The opportunity you kind of opened up for me really helped. If there was something to have done different, I think being able to see you in person would be cool, like face to face. We did everything over the phone, which is because of where I was living. I was living abroad. It would be nice for sure. Like, it would be cool. You would watch my game, so that's really cool, and you'll be doing that again, I hope. Is like, because you look at my body language. Obviously, you understand soccer at this point, but you see you're looking at this other part where I'm looking at another part, and it helps so much when you can objectively say to me, like, hey, Zev, the ball went left. It wasn't like you murdered somebody, which is sometimes how it feels when you've done something that you wish you hadn't done in that particular athletic position. So if I were to say one thing, it would be, and maybe now that we're closer, COVID makes it a little complicated, but maybe that I'm closer now, that would be really cool to see you in person and to go over it in person, because that's always just different.
Yeah, that's so interesting too. And you said that because, so like the person that I saw today, right? It's COVID time, and so he was shocked that I came, but it's an outdoor event, so we're able to kind of like watch a little bit. And so you know this, but you don't really know it. But you play FC Tormenta, so that's here in Statesboro, so super close. Yeah. Right. So we'll come. You know, we'll make it. Awesome. We'll make it. Yeah. So we'll be able to do that. And like you said, being in person for anything, like, you know, this is one thing that just as a therapist, but definitely as a mental performance coach, we often talk about that intimacy, if you will, being in person with an athlete specifically. But the cool thing is that we were able to create a relationship virtually, and you know, that's always kind of neat too. And again, I say this to people all the time because I work with people all over the world, and some people I never meet, Some people I meet only one time, and but there's still relationships and rapport that's able to be forged there. And so that's a really cool thing. And so, and definitely like the other thing that you mentioned too, like I always share this with mental performance coaches that are young or coming to the game, is that you don't have to have played the sport to be able to work with an athlete in that sport. Because there is, like you said, I have a different eye that I'm looking at, although I'm very familiar with, American soccer, but real football, right? So it does help, and working with teammates and being able to kind of be in that space does give some assistance, but a lot of times it's the concepts, they work in every sport. And so the cool thing for me is I have that experience working in like pretty much every sport that you can think of, minus maybe like curling or something. But so we're doing pretty good. So that's good to know that everything that you learned and were taught and we worked through was pretty good, minus the meeting in person. So I'll take it to the bank.
Yeah, no, it was amazing. It was, like I said, it was really, for me, I think every person's different. I used to say after working with you, I'd go, every person needs Robert Price. And while I still find it to be incredibly helpful for me, everybody does need to find it in their own terms. And I would force it upon some of my teammates in the sense that they would say this, and this. Not force it, but I'd maybe encourage it. And everybody has kind of their own path in a sense.
Sure.
But I do believe that every person can benefit in some way in having the discussion. And if they have the opportunity to discuss it with you, one of the best, that's what they ought to do.
Yeah, that would be awesome. So, and this is something I always share with clients, and you've actually done this before, and you found me from a colleague and that I provided services for. And so for me, that's I call it, that's the best way to meet a new person. And so for my current clients that watch this, for you and for anyone else that's out there, knowing that having that personal relationship with someone who has actually received these services really goes a long way. So I really look forward to being able to leverage that as best as I can, and to be able to help anybody else that you send my way. Also, because I want to make sure that they get the good service that you got, and they don't come to you like, oh my gosh, you sent me this guy, it was horrific, so I really value that, and I really think that that's a pretty cool thing. Any closing words that you want to share with people who are on the fence of using a mental performance coach?
I would say, obviously, the stigma has this negative point of view, but
Sure.
I want to say we're past it, but we're not, obviously. I would say if you're somebody who hears the voices, and you'll know what I mean, do good, bad, am I playing well, etc., etc. This is no different than doing physical therapy. It's like, or it's an exercise that enables us to do well. And I would say, if you can find any piece in the concept that there are people out there like Robert who are experts in this who can help you. That's one thing, that it works, not woo-woo works. Like, there are tangible things. You've heard me repeat over and over theme thought, which we can go over, or Robert, you will explain to whoever you work with next. There's tangible things that we go over. And then on top of that, when he addresses like the growth mindset, and you see, like, when you see it on paper, it brings, just even seeing then again, because I had training today and I, had voices in my head. You go like, oh my gosh, like, it's okay to have these thoughts. And that releases like so much tension. And I wasn't able to do any of that without Robert. And per my story at the beginning, if I'm going to close it, is those of you who are getting interested in this at the very beginning, you're probably were like me, in that you just want to perform well. And I would say, let that lead you into this. It will lead into more, but just follow that instinct. If you want to perform well and you're not worried about anything else, this will help. That's the bottom line. And I think, just to add to that, one more thing is, eating right and physical, that all that is so important. But it's really hard to notice, like, oh, I ate kale today, so then I ran better tomorrow. It's very, there's not a very quick piece there. Now, you got to do it, and it could help 2%, it could help 0.01%, and you'll still do it. This, I noticed a difference immediately after working with him. And so for me, I would say do it once. If you don't like it, don't do it again, but do it once. I think you'll notice a difference. And yeah, that's how I would end it.
Awesome. Well, I'd just like to thank Zev for his time this evening, and hopefully those of you who are listening and will see this will get the value out of it that Zev has shared. And it's very rare that we ever have an opportunity to share a client's story with the work that we do. And so I just value him for being open and honest and letting people know, hey, I do work with a mental performance coach. And again, that goes back to that stigma piece. And so for him to be open enough to just share, and hopefully this will just kind of help lean somebody towards working with someone like myself. That's a really cool thing, because I really value the work that we do in this field. So with that, man, I really look forward to people, if they have any questions, definitely on the bottom scroll there is my website, www.elitemindsllc.com. Right now, you should see that there is a free mental skills assessment that you can get on the website, and it kind of gets you started again. Kind of like Zev mentioned, it's probably your first kind of like, okay, I want to perform better. How do I do it? And so there's an assessment there that you can do, and we talk about these 9 mental skills that allow you to start understanding more how that mental side actually works. And so, as I always share with players, athletes, families, is that if you believe that there's a portion of your game that is mental, that means that you should actually spend deliberate and intentional time actually training that. And so if you're not, then you're missing out. And so I know no athlete wants to miss out on 1%, 2%, let alone, as we know, in playing professional sports, about 90% of what we do is mental. So if we're doing that and we don't have somebody working with our mindset, I invite you to find somebody quickly to be able to do that. So with that, I really appreciate your time. And again, this is Robert Price, CEO of Elite Minds, LLC.